Okay, guys, we're back. Sorry for the length of these videos this week, but I really want to make sure you understand the different styles of governance that exists. So we just got done talking about the council manager form of government, and now I want to talk about the commission system. And I don't want to rush in talking to this because it's still used in some places. And basically, the commission system is the executive, legislative, and administrative powers lies with elected city commissioners. In other words, city commissioners are elected, and then they are tasked with overseeing a specific department within the city, such as public works or finance or parks and recreation. All right, that's the basis of the commission system. It's not a very popular type of system here in the United States, although it is still used. Now, I'm going to go back and just reiterate the origin of the commission system, because I think in the last lecture segment, I was probably rushing it because I was looking at the short amount of time I had left. Now, the origin of the commission system is that it originated in Galveston, Texas in the early 1900s. Galveston had experienced a devastating hurricane that killed thousands and left the city in ruins. The existing city government proved ineffective in dealing with the aftermath of this disaster. In response, the Texas legislature approved a completely new form of municipal government, the commission system, to try to deal with the huge task of rebuilding the city. It proved successful. Galveston was rebuilt and put back on civic track. This success led to other municipalities to follow Galveston's lead and to adopt the commission form of governance. Now, the drawback of the system is that the merging of elected and administrative positions leads to commissioners becoming the entrenched advocates of their departments, and winning an election and administering a large bureaucracy are very different skills. In other words, good politicians do not always make good department heads. And so that is the drawback with this commission system. One of the major cities that still uses the commission system is the city of Portland, Oregon. And there has been talk off and on about whether or not Oregon needs to move away from the commission system. But so far, that's still the system that they have in place. Municipalities, one of the other types is called town meetings, which isn't really discussed in our textbook, but I just wanted to touch on it just a little bit in case some of you are familiar with, or your local community uses this type of system. And here the politics are worked out before the actual meetings took place. Neighbors would talk to each other across their fences and in taverns, and the grassroots agreements opined or agreed in these informal discussions then were expressed as community consensus in town meetings. So basically the people made the choices, okay? Legislative power is held by local people. General procedures were followed, things such as that, and this is where you get the role of board of selectmen in some communities. The role of the board of selectmen, there is some authority there. However, it may be delegated to representative board, whose members are called selectmen. The board of selectmen exercises whatever authority is granted to it and is responsible for seeing that policies enacted in the town meetings are carried out. So again, town meetings, it's something that you might typically find in the Northeast just because of the relative size of some of the communities and the history in terms of the development of our nation as a whole started in the Northeast. So some of these structures were in place from that era. But again, it's not one of our topics for this week, but I just want to make sure you had some understanding as to what it was about. Special districts, again, not really part of our discussion this week, but again, just so you know what they're for, and I talked about those earlier, You're going to find those in terms of housing services, public transportation, mosquito control, libraries are even part of special districts depending on your community. The firefighting services, water, sewage, an array of things fall under special districts. The thing about special districts as compared to local government, I just like to say that special districts often fly under the radar. People are not familiar with special districts, and or they don't pay attention. There's a lack of visibility that often leads to low levels of accountability. You don't know much about what's going on. For example, if you live in an area where your water is provided by a water district, have you ever been to one of their meetings? Do you know what their issues are? Do you know what their budget is? Do you know what their employees make? These are all things that relate to special districts. They typically, in my experience, like I said, they fly under the radar. And so you end up getting rate increases for certain things such as water, and you may say, oh my gosh, what happened? Our water bill is going up. They probably had a meeting. Well, they did have to have a meeting. So the special district has members of the water board. They probably had a meeting to raise your water rates, and maybe nobody was even at that meeting. I mean, that's how sometimes their lack of visibility and the ability of these special districts to sort of fly under the radar, right? But I think I wanted you just to know that to have some ideas as well as about special districts. Okay. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here. This week, you're looking at the four structures you studied: the strong mayor, weak mayor, commission, and council manager. Which one do you believe is the most responsive to the need of constituents? So you can evaluate that in terms of, well, would a strong mayor be most responsive? Would a council manager form of government be most responsive? A weak mayor more responsive? Commission more responsive? So you have to do a little homework as you think about this, and maybe even your own personal experience. How about the needs of employees within the government? So in other words, do you think that employees are better off with a certain type of governance? And employees are often more concerned with negotiations, pay raises, benefits, things like that. So which one of these styles, if you will, of governance do you think employees would embrace the most, right? So they give you some ideas to something just to think about. What are your thoughts about the influence that politics may have on the process? Which one of these styles of governance do you believe is subject to more political influence than others? And is there a governance that you believe that would be most insulated from political pressures? Whether those pressures are special interest groups or employee unions, whatever the case is, and then you have to explain. So really give this some thought this week as you decide about this whole idea of the governance structures that municipalities use. Okay, so again, those are the four basic kinds. We have the strong mayor, weak mayor, commission, and council manager form. So take a look at those. I added a few others in here. We did talk again about the county government, but I think that's an important local government for you to understand. Just because the county does play a role in the expenditure of local funds in some cases, like I said, for child welfare or an array of things, where social programs are all typically funneled through the county and then into the cities. But anyhow, I hope you found this useful. Sorry this is so long, but I wanted to make sure you had a really good base from which to work as you work on your first assignment for the week. Okay? As always, if you ever have any questions or concerns, please never hesitate to contact me. And let's have a great week, and I'll see you in Brightspace. Thanks, guys.